So usually how I like to start these conversations is really about an individual's journey. And fortunately, when I get to speak to people, they're really working on something that is pretty impactful, and they're going to be sort of working on it for a lot of their life, a lot of time, and a lot of effort spent on it. But in this case, in this rare case, I kind of want to talk a little bit about your predecessor. And sort of Leila has been sort of one of the originals in sort of this impact entrepreneur, social entrepreneurship sort of landscape, right? Through Samasource and then through LXMI. So I think doing maybe a little in memory of her for those who don't know who she was. Talk a little bit about her journey first, and maybe how she had impacted your life.
Leila Janah was a social impact serial entrepreneur, a daughter of Indian immigrants, hustled her way, started early going to Harvard, worked odd jobs just to pay her way through school, started on this journey in social impact pretty early. She, when she was still in her early teens, she went to Africa to volunteer work and just got presence to this tremendous pool of talent that is part of that continent, but we just never really get in contact with here in the West. That kind of planted a seed for her early on. Fast forward a couple years after she graduated from Harvard, she got this idea of starting Samasource, her first social impact startup, which is in the tech AI space, essentially placing computer centers in rural parts of Africa, teaching young adults and women basic computer skills and
Amazing.
data entry skills.
Mm-hmm.
And through the highway of technology, then working with Fortune 50 companies such as Google, Microsoft, and Tesla, giving work to these marginalized communities through computer work. For example, say Tesla needs to annotate images for self-driving cars. It's a job that requires a human component. It's, looking at an image and saying, this is a person, this is a building, this is a bus, or whatever it might be, right? So it's a human that needs to do it, at least at this point. But in many other countries and in the developed world, not a lot of people are wanting to take on that type of job. But for someone living in a slum in East Africa, that provides a new future. And for them to be able to work directly with these amazing companies is crafting a new future, not just for that individual, but also for that individual's family and for the community at large. So that was, the genesis of her social impact journey. And she was going back and forth to Africa a lot. One day at a local market in Uganda, stumbled upon this ingredient called nilotica, which is a type of superfood nut that grows wild on trees in northern Uganda and South Sudan. And just seeing these, like a nut like nilotica, but also all these other rare medicinal plants that are available in the region, but have never been exported to the West. Just, it's been used by the local communities for generations, but we just never see it here in the West because we're used to lab produced products and a different type of connection to nature. She just realized that, wow, okay, I can actually start another social impact company applying the same type of give work model that she pioneered with Samasource, but then using clean beauty as the vehicle to create good. So in the harvesting of the rare medicinal plants that we use for our products here at LXMI, we're partnering with women's fair trade cooperatives in remote areas of the world, and then giving work to underserved women in underserved communities in harvesting the plants. So it is not just providing work to that individual and helping them lift themselves and their families out of poverty, but it also then impacts climate change because you show the local communities the value of these natural resources. Specifically nilotica trees, for example. For the longest time, the locals didn't quite realize the power of these trees and preserving these trees. They would get chopped down and sold for firewood for $1 a day on the roadside. But then showing them that, hey, actually, you can harvest the nuts. They have been using the nilotica nuts as a cold pressed butter for generations to treat various skin conditions. But it was just used on a local scale, but to show, oh, you can actually work with the West. We can export that. And especially northern Uganda was a region that for decades was torn apart by a brutal civil war. So even that showing them that, you can use nature as a way out of a lot of these problems that you're facing. And especially when it comes to the give work model, Leila really saw, and through a lot of research from various organizations, it's been shown that work and employment is such a critical component to creating lasting change. We often view, foreign aid and nonprofits as kind of like the vehicles to create, or to help these developing nations. But, the reality is, in the past 60 years alone, over $1 trillion in development related aid has transferred hands from the rich West to, developing nations in Africa alone. And those funds have definitely created a big change, but at the same time, these funds don't always reach the people that need it the most. The same thing, say, if you're, a nonprofit comes in and builds a school or something like that, what happens in those communities when the kids of the poorest parents can't afford school uniforms or school books? That fancy shiny school can even exacerbate the differences in that community. So it is a very interesting model that she pioneered, where we can use business as a vehicle to create lasting change. And we're working a lot with government agencies and these nonprofit players. So it's an ecosystem of positive change. And she really believed, and at the company we really believe that business and doing good don't have to be diametrically opposed. They can and should power charge one another. So with that, she launched, Sama Source, the tech AI company. I think it was about 12 years ago now. And, they've grown into a big player in their space. And then in 2015, she launched LXMI, also launched another nonprofit called Sama School, which is working on a similar model as Sama Source, but US, with a focus on the US. So she was a visionary and a pioneer in many ways, an extremely driven, fantastic human being in so many ways. And it was at the beginning of 2019, she got diagnosed with cancer. And at that, I had started with LXMI a little before that. But during her time in treatment, worked very closely with Leila. And, we never saw anything else or imagined that, she wouldn't pull through. She was just this lion's mind of being able at all these ventures and everything, just such a trailblazer in many ways. So there's no doubt. But then, in January 2020, she passed away from cancer. She was only 37. And, it's a tremendous loss for us all. But I always wonder, what could have happened if a person like her would have lived until her 80s or 90s. At 37, she had already lifted over 50,000 people out of poverty. So it was a tremendous tragedy, but she's a incredible source of inspiration. And we're very happy to be able to continue her legacy and continue the brand mission and forward this important work that we really think is the future for a lot of this positive change that we want to create in the world.
Yeah, no, her story is it's unbelievable what she could do at such a very young age. She accomplished a lifetime worth of things, right? Which is, incredibly impressive and inspiring. So, I just, I hope what she has done is, obviously it won't be lost anytime soon, but, in keeping her memory alive through LXMI and through obviously Samasource and all the things she's left behind, right? And that if anybody wants to read the book, I think Give Work is the actual name of the book, correct?
Yes, so correct.
Yeah, that's a great way to really get insight on what she accomplished and built in her young life, So thank you for sharing that. But I think it's a great segue into your life and sort of what the baton that has been passed on to you. And let's kind of talk a little bit about how, your journey intertwined with LXMI and what it's been like to get introduced to Leila and to what she was doing. What was your journey before that? And then how did you come about meeting her?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Stockholm, Sweden. I came to the US about 12 years ago with big curiosity, a dream, hunger for adventure. I worked a lot of different operation roles in various startups, and I've always been fascinated by this whole, building of a company from scratch, and how to create company cultures and being able to really have an impact. Always worked in a lot of with brands that have been very mission driven. I've never really believed in work being this 9 to 5 type of lifestyle, and then you go home and then deal with your life in other ways. For me, it's always been, it's just been a full on life experience, and I really thrive in these type of maybe uncertain but very interesting settings. I also describe myself as a clean beauty nerd. I had my own health journey with, struggled with acne and bad skin, sensitive skin for all of my life, and always gravitated towards wellness and well-being in general, and exploring all of the different natural ways that you can heal the body and the system. And I think there's just so much wisdom in nature and in the holistic system of the body that we're not really quite in tune with here, especially not in the Western world. So I was living down in Miami for about 10 years and working down there, and realized I was ready for a change. I had gotten my green card through work, and I had paid my dues, and I was free to move on to something new. And I thought, I really want to go to New York, and I really want to work in another startup with something that I truly believe in, and saw that LXMI was looking for an operations and finance manager, and that was the perfect job for me. I was familiar already with the brand, and really liked the products, and interviewed and met with Leila, and we really clicked right away. We share the same mission and view of a lot of different things, from everything in from business to life, through just very similar characteristics in many ways. So
on that application, did you put that you were a marathon runner and you're quadrilingual? I can't even say it, let alone
quadrilingual. I'm not sure if I did, but somehow that was one of those things. I don't know actually how. I know Leila picked up on that, because she would always, I remember whenever we would go someplace, and she would always introduce me and say, "Oh, this is Anna. She's done Ironman. She's done Ironman triathlon, so she's an Ironman." And to me, that's just, I've always been super fascinated by doing physical challenges and races, and long endurance type of sports. So it's just been part of my nature. So I've never really quite reflected too much on.
What's harder, to become quadrilingual or becoming an Iron Woman? What's like, what was, because they're both equally, I feel like, as damaging. Like, one's on the body and then one's on the brain. They're both equally hard to do.
Well, I think for me, I've always been very curiosity driven, and I like talking to people. I love exploring, meeting new people and everything. So for me, naturally coming from Sweden, we're a very small country. And if I want to speak only Swedish, then, I'll have about 8-9 million people to talk to, and which sounds like a lot, but I always wanted more. So I've always studied a lot of languages growing up, and then I lived in England. I lived in Italy for a while as well before coming to the US. And just.
So it's Italian. So it's Swedish, Italian, English. What is it?
Spanish.
And Spanish. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where it's just been passion. Another passion of mine is just the encounter between people, and how you can do that in different, across different cultures and different languages. And then the long endurance triathlon part was just more of a fun challenge. A lot of the times I realized when I do these intense races, I learned so much. I would say that the Ironman, the full Ironman that I did, was one of the biggest learning experiences for me, and I've applied the knowledge from there.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know if I could compare the two. I think maybe languages is trickier, because you have to upkeep it. With a race, you can train and you can have it done, and in a way you can live off that old merit forever.
Do you still train that hard, or was that something you did earlier?
I train on and off right now. It takes a lot of time.
Sure.
To
that's
have
a
that type of
whole job.
that training load. And when I did, that later race, I think I trained 20 hours a week for 9
Wow.
weeks. So it wasn't that long. And a lot of the times that's one of those lessons I've learned that, when I started with that, I've never done even a triathlon. I didn't even own a bicycle or anything like that. So when I, just Googling how to do an Ironman triathlon, and, you just see all this information online saying, oh, you need to have a coach and you need to do this. And it makes it sound so much more complicated than it is. And I just thought, well, maybe I can figure this out by myself, and I have a feeling I can do it in a much shorter time than all of these reports are saying online. And turns out it was fine. A lot of the times, the biggest barriers are in our minds, and thinking that we can't do it, or thinking that it's much harder than it is. I mean, how often does that not happen? You think that oh, this is going to be a really intense thing, and once you're through it, you're like, oh, it wasn't actually that bad.
So, I mean, it seems like from learning languages and doing the triathlons, I think there's a lot of sort of mental, like, fortitude and just concentration that goes into both of those items. How was that segued into, becoming CEO of a growing brand, impact brand, which is a bit different, right? Because obviously, P&L matters, margins, all these things that normal businesses sort of worry about. You have to worry about that too. But you're also, like you said before, we're sort of dealing with the idea that this business and company can change a generation of people, right? It can change the generation of a community, of an entire neighborhood or community, through this. So how is it transitioning to CEO? And obviously, these mental challenges you've faced before and sort of just overcome personally. How has that helped, translate into becoming the CEO?
Good question. Yes. I mean, I think the journey to CEO has definitely been a very challenging and interesting time. Like I mentioned, I started the finance and ops side at LXMI, and then during Leila's treatment for cancer, she asked me to step up and take things on so that she could focus on her well-being. And obviously at that time there was, like I said, we all thought that she was going to come back, so this was just a temporary thing. But throughout the process, she did ask me, and we did talk about the CEO role, and she said that she did see me as the new CEO. But still, I wasn't quite prepared for that when she passed. And it was a personal loss, because in many ways, we were very close in age, and she was almost like a sister to me in many ways, as a mentor, a friend, not just my boss. But then when the board of directors asked if I wanted to take things on officially, since I'd already kind of been running things behind the scenes, obviously there was a lot of fear there. It was just the feeling of it's pretty big shoes to fill. But at the same time, then knowing that I had Leila's support, we did share the same vision, and I've been working in these types of ways of wanting to make a difference for the longest time. And even in my races, I would always do races for charity, and it would always be directed to the African continent in one way or another, or to well-being, or to whatever it might be, but it was always in that area. So it all kind of made sense. But I do see that for me, one of the things, like I mentioned with the Ironman race, is realizing that I can do way more than I think. And a lot of it is just being able to when you've gone through anything, whatever we all go through, it helps us in the next time, when we just having that confidence of knowing, okay, well, I can handle a much bigger load than I think. But then at the same time, also just the mental training that goes into that, also being able to push myself to the next level, having a certain extra gear with my own body and my connection with my body. I remember in the beginning, the board and the majority owner would always be like, "Are you okay? You're not working too hard? Everything is okay?" And I'm like, I know my body like I know every inch of my body, and I know exactly when I'm about to break down, and when I need to pull back, and when I can put in that extra gear. And that has helped a lot as well, and just in the overall performance. So I think it all kind of comes full circle. One thing that I've learned, especially through this experience, but through my life in general, I think people underestimate character. And I think when I first got asked to take things over, I definitely faced a lot of imposter syndrome, through conversations with friends and people who know me well. And they said, well, Leila saw you as the next CEO as well, and she knows your character more than anything. And whatever the support that you want from the board, whatever the resources that you need to pull this off, you can find that. But character is something that you need to just develop, and you have the seeds for that already. And I think that's more the strength that this whole experience has brought.
I want to talk a little bit about actually what LXMI does, right? Because I think we can talk about business and social entrepreneurship and impact brands, right? Sometimes they're just words, right? And we don't see, and normally people don't understand like actually what happens, right, in communities, and the impact that occurs, and how lives can be changed through business models like this. So just kind of take us through an overall picture maybe of what LXMI is, and sort of its mission, and sort of its goals as a company.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it's a clean beauty brand. So we do skincare, clean ingredients, and using rare medicinal plants that we source from various regions around the world. These type of plants that have been used by indigenous communities for generations, but that we just commonly don't see in the West, because it's a costly and patient process to get access to these types of botanicals on a larger scale. So with that, like I mentioned, we work with mostly with women's fair trade cooperatives. A lot of our business is harvesting Nilotica in northern Uganda, but then also we partner with various organizations along the way as well, just how we can triangulate positive change. So say, for example, we have one project, which was Leila's last passion project. It's a serum called LXMI 33, just 33 rare medicinal plants and botanicals that goes into this really beautiful oil. And we did that in partnership with an environmental nonprofit, Conservation International, and the Surinamese government and a tribe, the Amazon jungle in Suriname in South America. And one of these rare plants, one of the 33 plants in the serum is called tuca oil. It's a type of Brazil nut oil, Brazil nuts that grow wild in the Amazon. And in this project where we partnered with a environmental nonprofit and the tribe, we're enabling the tribe to protect the land around this village called Alalapadu. And by buying their production of tuca oil, we can then enable the tribe through the protection of this environmental nonprofit and the support from the Surinamese government, help the tribe to protect 235,000 hectares of Amazon jungle. Wow. Which is, a tremendous asset to the locals, but also then for the wildlife that live there. I mean, it's a very empowering project and message also for the individual consumer, I feel, because especially when it comes to climate change, there are not a lot of things we can do on an individual level that is not restrictive. A lot of it is living less somehow. It's fly less, eat less red meat, drive less. But we really believe that when it comes to climate change and in general, to create positive change, we need to incorporate daily habits in a way that makes this change sustainable for the individual as well. It's driving less or flying less and all of that stuff only works, I think, for a certain amount of time, and then you kind of start to get back into your regular routine again. But getting ready in the morning and taking care of your skin is something that you do anyway, most of us. So by using a product that has been created in this sort of way, you're making a positive change on a daily basis. And then not just on the environmental side, but this is also, again, providing income for this tribe. And in this project as well, we're working with the tribe long term in terms of, which is where the environmental nonprofit also comes in with a lot of education to the tribe, everything from personal finances to gender equality. We're installing solar panels in this tribe, and just in a much more long-term type of way. It's not just a marketing ploy or a do-good mission that's on a surface level, but something where we really believe that we can. It's more using clean beauty as a vehicle to create change. And then like I mentioned, the Nilotica nut type of project where
Yeah.
seeing the positive change that we can create with us women. And a lot of these, most of the people that we work with have been with us since day one, and they become like family. It's just
That's great.
incredible to see the change that they can do, and not just for themselves, but for these women to feel like they can take care of themselves and their families, and for their kids to be able to go to school. And also just imagine that world where kids grow up and they see their mom being able to take care of herself and their family. She can choose her partner out of love, not out of necessity.
Yeah.
She has a voice, because at the same time, it's when you have that sense of agency over your own life, it also impacts so many other problems that we're trying to solve downstream on a global scale. Like I mentioned, education,
Right.
healthcare, sanitation. Research shows that on average, a woman tends to reinvest about 90% of her paycheck into the health, education, and well-being of her family and community. So the impact, just by giving work to a woman, you just spread the impact farther and deeper. And that's that type of impact that we can see. It's also just in terms of, say, spreading democracy, for example, right? It's like
totally.
when you're a contributing taxpayer.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
It's like you have a voice. You can hold your government officials accountable. You can contribute to society in a whole different way, and especially then, by including women in that discussion, it just changes things on a much broader scale. So that's one of those things for us. We just see, we obviously, clean social impact skincare isn't the only solution, but I think it is a very impactful solution on global poverty and all of the downstream effects of that. But then also climate change, like I mentioned, it's like we have to do more on a global level together, and businesses do have a responsibility to not just not do harm. It's non-toxic products, or we're doing give back donations or planting trees and that sort of stuff, which is nice. But at the same time, it's like if you build a business with where the whole business model, the whole supply chain, everything is rooted in that do good mission.
Like you said, the ancillary benefits from it are so many, right? You might just try to solve economic development in this one little community, right? But by doing that, you also solve education or health in a community, right? There's so many different things that come off of just, having economic empowerment. But like you said, even on top of that, women empowerment, because women invest money better than men when you're talking about family, in general life, really. I mean, women in finances, I think we could finally say that you are better at it than we are. So I think we're yet to really see the ancillary data from companies doing it from in a holistic point of view from their whole company, right? The entire ecosystem has some type of impact behind it. I think we're yet to really see what the positive impact, just because it hasn't been around so long, right? I mean, 2015, like it's going to take probably another decade or so before we really see that first generation of a child seeing his or her mother work and their whole life and provide for them and give them the opportunity. We're kind of yet to see that, how that affects the mental well-being and the economic well-being of the next generation of these women who are the first to come out of this movement. So I just, obviously I'm very optimistic, but we keep commenting on the word clean beauty. And I think for some people, I think maybe let's try to define that a little bit, because there's a lot of different words being thrown at consumers nowadays, right? And especially as the social responsibility movement comes to the forefront a little bit, things can get a little confusing, because now you'll have massive, really big brands who haven't been so positive in the past now start to change their tone a little bit, slap labels on things and use keywords that will get consumers to buy them or whatever it may be. But just talk a little bit about clean beauty versus, let's just call it traditional beauty, and maybe what the differences are there and why consumers should care.
Yes, absolutely. And like you mentioned, there's been a lot of movement in the industry from this conventional beauty to a more clean beauty narrative. And obviously there are different categories to it as well.
Sure.
From our side, we just view it as products that you put on your body really impacts long-term, your overall
Pretty important.
well-being. And it's just one of those things, I think, especially in the light of the current pandemic, a lot of people are realizing that, that holistic connection of what you put on your body gets absorbed into your body. It's about 60% of what you apply to your skin can get absorbed into the body and the bloodstream. And a lot of conventional beauty products are filled, unfortunately, with a lot of ingredients that are maybe not supposed to be inside of our bodies. On average, a woman uses about 12 personal care products in a day, between shampoo, soap, makeup, skincare, toothpaste, all of that stuff. And it's been shown, it contains around just under 170 different chemicals. And we don't really know what that does on a long-term basis. We apply it once or maybe twice a day for decades. And a lot of the times these are hormone disruptors, immunosuppressants, carcinogens, and the common consumer might not even know about that. You turn the back of a product and it can look like a jungle, like a chemistry project.
Only a quadlingualist could even understand who to read on the back of the bottle.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just it is a very different approach to skincare, where we believe that plants and medicinal botanical things from Mother Nature have a lot more power than we are familiar with. And you should treat the body with the type of love and respect it deserves, and also looking at it long term, because you can apply these toxic or chemical products and it might have a great effect on your skin, because your skin is a barrier. So whatever you put on it, communicates with the body in general. So you can put something on the skin that just kind of freezes it, and it'll look great, but because it's toxic and chemical, it just freezes everything up. So it's almost like putting an iron curtain over this barrier. And like I said, it might be hormone disruptors and immunosuppressants and all that.
Can't really see internally. Don't know what that. Internally what's happening.
What is happening and what is going to happen long term, and we don't know the effects of that. So in general, it's also not just the effect on yourself, but there's also research showing that they did some research a couple of years ago. I think it's 287 different chemicals in the umbilical cord blood in newborn babies. Wow. So even that, it's stored in the body. It's passed on to the next generation, and these small toddlers and newborns, they should not be exposed to these type of chemicals. It's not something the body was made to handle. So for us, we really think that we want ingredient transparency. We want ingredients that actually do good for the body, short term, long term, and like do good for the planet. So for us, it's like you shouldn't have to choose between a product that actually works and does good for you and the people around you. Obviously, like there's a lot of things I can go into as a clean beauty nerd when it comes to ingredients and all of that type of stuff. But I think in general, it can be a jungle for the average consumer, especially for someone who's used to the more conventional beauty products and the kind of quick effects that you see with that. But just to shift to clean beauty and taking on a more long-term perspective and a long-term relationship to your own well-being, it can be a bit of a process. But even just starting small, like I said, it's you can create these big changes through the small habits that you're doing every day. So it might just be changing a product, or looking at the type of products that you're using on your child or on yourself. So I think it's a good shift, though.
This is the kind of, I think, threshold that we're at, and where I think everything can take a real positive leap, is like getting LXMI into obviously like Target, big distribution areas for everyday consumers. How has it been? Have you had conversations, obviously, with these big sort of chains where they can then make consumer habits much more easy?
For LXMI, we launched in 2016 as the first clean social impact beauty brand to be sold at Sephora. So we've definitely been involved with larger retailers as well. But like you mentioned, it is a different game, and especially now, when we started, clean beauty was a very niche market, and the clean beauty buyer was traditionally very savvy when it came to ingredients and knew a lot about products and all that type of stuff. Now, especially with COVID, the market is kind of expanding, and the more traditional, conventional beauty buyer is moving into the clean beauty space. And that has obviously created new interesting challenges for us, a lot around that consumer education part.
Yeah.
And we find definitely that, a lot of the bigger retailers, they carry a little bit of everything. And that can be confusing for the consumer. One thing that I really like, both as a consumer myself, but also from a brand perspective, is seeing a lot of these clean beauty retailers that are popping up. For example, Credo, Detox Market here in the US, where they do all of the vetting for you as a consumer. So they have certain standards in terms of clean ingredients. So if you're being sold there, that means that you're vetted already. So as a consumer, I, for example, do buy a lot of clean beauty products at Detox Market, which is one of our retailers. And it's really nice to be able to go in there and say, okay, well, I know that whatever I get in here is going to be of a certain standard.
Right.
Of ingredients, cleanliness. And that could be a really good way for someone to start. Because like I said, it is a jungle. We start to look at ingredients and it just feels overwhelming. But then you can find people who do that work for you. So you can just kind of pick and choose what works for you and what type of products that you're interested in.
Amazing. Well, I want to end on the last question to be a little bit about the future and sort of goals and sort of milestones of sort of impact that internally you look at and the team looks at. And, maybe if you look 3 to 5 years down the line, what are some of the successes and goals that you hope to accomplish? Do you want to obviously add more makers, more women to the job force in different areas? Is it staying in the continent of Africa? Are there other places around the world where amazing sort of botanicals exist, where that could be another area where employment can go a long way, and the products there can be equally as clean and sustainable? So just when you're talking about impact, sort of goals over the next 3 to 5 years, what do those look like?
I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Obviously, when I started as a CEO and officially took over, it was a big part of the conversation also with the board, because naturally when there is that type of handover from the previous CEO, Leila, who had such a clear profile, and she was a very strong character in many ways. Just in general, just the continuity of the brand has been a big discussion for us. And how do you translate her legacy into the future for us? And I've been very lucky that our community has been extremely welcoming to me and, really embraced me and accepted this change in a very supportive way. But of course, part of that is also, how do I translate that for the future? For us, we're definitely looking at more type of projects. I mentioned the project in the Amazon. I do feel that, there are a lot of really cool ways that companies can work with the environment and, help the consumer fight climate change and, a wider range of problems that we want to take on. I do see as well that just as with the pandemic and a lot of brands kind of waking up to the need for more do good missions and that sort of stuff. I mentioned, there are a lot of brands who are doing give back donations and planting trees type of initiatives. And that is definitely good, but we do also want to encourage more brands to take it on at a deeper level.
Yeah.
So we're also, I do participate in a lot of different situations and podcast interviews and different outlets to help other brands, in other industries, because you can apply the give work model to most industries.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a direction that we would like to see as well. Like, we're happy to be one of the first in this, but we're definitely not wanting to be, one of the last either. So to start and help lead this movement of incorporating the business world with the nonprofit and the foreign aid world and empowered consumers, I think that could be a really interesting ecosystem moving forward. So there's a lot of things obviously on my mind of how we grow a brand in an authentic way. Especially in the startup world, there's so much hype around insane growth and all of this top line revenue. It's all this stuff.
Yeah.
and you becoming big on Instagram and all of that type
Hmm.
of stuff. And I think for us, the having always the triple bottom line in mind of profit, people, and the planet is critical. Of course, there are a lot of different voices. There's no way, the right way to grow a brand, but we want to
Sure.
continue to be an advocate, be outspoken, and have a strong voice in the clean beauty space and beyond, in the business world in general, and continue the social impact mission that Leila so beautifully started. So it's going to be a process for sure. Already during this pandemic now, there's been a lot of challenges coming up that
Yeah.
we're facing, but very, very optimistic for the future. But I think it's just we need more brands, and not just LXMI, but in any other industry as well. I think we need more brands with an authentic voice, and where it's more connecting to that human side. The consumer is hungry for it.
Yeah.
We don't want to just consume products that do no good for nobody, not even for the user. And I think it's going to be
Right.
really hard, especially in the beauty space, to in 5 years sell a product that is full of chemicals and that does no good for nobody. So
Right.
I think more consumers are realizing that we want brands to stand for something meaningful and something genuine.
Yeah.
So that's definitely where we will continue in the next few years.
Well, thank you so much, Anna.
No,
Amazing
thank you.
story, and best of luck the rest of this year. And obviously